Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Savvy Report. I'm Ernie Martin, founder and managing director of Receivable Savvy, where we provide research and best practice to help master the order-to-cash process. Today, we're speaking with Sashi Narahari, founder and CEO of HighRadius. And as many of you know, HighRadius offers cloud-based autonomous software for the office of the CFO. Or in other words, HighRadius is perhaps a best friend to the order-to-cash process of any organization. And what we'll cover today is how supplier organizations can leverage forward-looking technology to address several challenges in the order-to-cash process. So without further ado, welcome, Sashi, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ernie.
Absolutely. And so while many who tune into this program may know about HighRadius, tell us a little bit about the organization for those who may not know.
You bet. So as you said, Ernie, we are a software company that focuses on the office of the CFO. We have multiple software. The main product we have is order to cash and accounts receivables automation. We also have a treasury product as well as a close and reconciliation product. We are market leaders in order to cash and accounts receivables with about 750 clients and then about 3,000 employees globally.
Excellent, excellent. And so you've recently been interviewing a lot of finance leaders on the theme of dead or alive. And so let me ask you this. Do you think ERPs will be dead in the next 10 years?
ERPs will not be dead in 10 years, but I think their role will significantly change, and it's already probably happening. What is going to happen with most ERPs, whether it is SAP, Oracle, NetSuite, is they will kind of become the equivalent of the digital version of the good old file cabinets and paper and folders. So what that means is, if you go back in time, we used to conduct business, and then we used to keep the records of the business in the file cabinet in paper format, because that was basically the truth, right? Whether it is a purchase order, sales order.
Right.
So ERPs basically will evolve to a critical hub, kind of like the backbone hub of a digital record. But what is happening is most of the orchestration of the business processes, whether it is AR, treasury, what we do, or even other functions, are going into more modern, higher-end niche software. Could be Workday for HR or accounts receivables for HighRadius. And then we are getting more and more advanced, so you can orchestrate the business that would have happened offline in a software system, but then you would post it back into the backbone ERP.
Right. So ERPs will have a role to play, but they may not necessarily be on the bleeding edge, if you will, going forward. Okay, excellent. Yep. And so HighRadius was founded in 2006, and you must have spoken to thousands of finance professionals in the order to cash, accounts receivable space. And how has this area evolved over the last decade?
Yeah, I think so. What happened when it comes to IT transformation and digital transformation is the finance department was kind of left back, right? Most of the investments went into front office functions like sales and marketing. As you know, sales leaders will always get bigger budgets because they hit their target.
Exactly.
So a lot of the investments went in sales systems like Salesforce, marketing systems like Marketo, HR systems, and so forth. And the finance system had a very basic journal entry system like ERP. But I think now the good thing is they're leapfrogging to kind of getting their share of attention. So there is a lot of transformation happening globally, from large enterprise companies to even small SMBs, because software companies like HighRadius are able to provide technologies that are reasonably cost effective and go through the digital transformation in few months, versus it is pretty expensive before.
Right. And so we hear a lot about new technologies, specifically in automation and artificial intelligence in accounts receivable and finance. And so leaders are exposed to a lot of that chatter around those topics. And so where does artificial intelligence fit regarding order to cash, and should finance leaders really care about that?
I think finance leaders are the number one use case actually for AI, because finance is all about data, right? And then probably if there is one department that is more about data, it's finance. My take is from a finance leader standpoint, I mean, the AI is probably going to be the biggest new transformation that you'll go through after internet. I mean, if you just think about internet being on the web and doing everything, AI will be very native part over the next decade. And you should expect to see that being an integral part of your life in the professional world. You're all probably, Ernie, you personally, me personally, and the finance leaders and their teams are already going through this on a daily basis on the personal side. When you do the Amazon shopping, the recommendation engine is based on AI. When you're doing the Uber order and connecting the passengers and the demand and the supply signals matching up. Unknowingly, even as consumers, we have already migrated on the consumer economy into an AI world, and you're already getting used to it and you're building muscle memory. The business world and the systems that you use are not there yet, but are rapidly getting there. So you will be part of it. You'll be, and then as a leader, if you're a finance leader, you should actively drive the transformation to be ahead of the curve. Right.
And that's an excellent point too, because AI and other technologies like AI have found their way into the consumer side as well as the business side as well. And so that's taking a leadership role in a lot of innovation that we're seeing both on the B2B and the consumer side as well. So excellent point. And, so as someone who has implemented over 2,000 finance transformation projects, what are some of the biggest fears CFOs have when it comes to automation, artificial intelligence, and what would you recommend to them? What would your advice to them be?
I think it depends on whom you talk to in a finance department. There is CFOs and controllers, more of the exec leadership team, and then there is the individual contributors or the people who are doing the transaction work, right? So let me kind of start with that, and that will help you understand what CFOs are going through. So at an individual level, there is a lot of fear around robots will automate their jobs, and there is a general pushback from a transformation standpoint, and change management is a big issue. So the CFOs have to think about this. And the way we explain to the individuals is, you're already as a consumer making this choice and you're going through transformation, right? You're not willing to go on a weekend from store 1 to store 2 to store 3 to buy, like how you did 10, 15 years back. You go to Amazon and you shop in 5 minutes. So you personally, democratically have made a choice. So what is going to happen is, you being a supplier, your customers will also make the choice. So you need to provide the service. Just like when you get the service from Amazon, digitally as well as in person. So you need to think about it. So professionally, all of us have to upskill and evolve to be with the change, because the change is inevitable. From a CFO standpoint, I think, how do we communicate effectively to their teams? How do you have that chat with them? This is good for them professionally, which is where the world is going. Upskilling them and investing in change management is critical, because otherwise you can implement software, but you won't get adoption.
Right, exactly. And that's another excellent point. And so that AI, that artificial intelligence leading to autonomous software. And so how has that evolved from where HighRadius was and the industry was 10 or 15 years ago? And do you see the current receivable management function evolving? And what might that look like in about 5 years?
Yeah, evolved a lot. Actually, if I'll take 2 use cases, real world use cases from an AR accounts receivable standpoint. One of the use cases is cash application, which is taking payments that you get into the bank and the remittance details and automatically applying and clearing the invoices. Across our 750 clients, we actually do about 91% automation. If you go back 5 years, that was almost manual for most companies, or whoever implemented technology was in the low 40s. So that's a major shift. So we truly think of that as autonomous, because it's like the engines are processing, and it's not the best use of anyone's time to manually log into the bank, download a check, go to the ERP and clear. The analyst time is better used in more strategic activities, interacting with your customers. The second use case is collections, where using AI, we can predict when an invoice will get paid in the future. So today, the way the collections departments work without AI is, you wait for the invoices to age, and you do the smile and dial for dollars, past due collections. It's not necessarily very sexy if you think about it, like chasing your customers, where are my bills? That seems like the good old mafia chasing a bunch of people to collect money.
Right.
Versus now what you do is you see the position of your customers 30 days from now,
Mhm.
and you are more proactive and you're doing softer collections on a more surgical basis. It is a more high-touch service, but it is also going to improve your DSO. So it's kind of creating the best of both worlds through more intelligent collection.
Right, right. And so everything you're talking about requires change because not every organization is doing that, right? And so some organizations are handling processes the same way they did, 5, 10, 15 years ago. And so there's a little bit of change management, digital transformation that's rooted in organizations that are streamlining their operations for the sake of greater efficiency, increased revenue, and ultimately long-term survival, right? And so because most organizations and most people don't like change, we know it's necessary, especially in business. So how can the order to cash automation turn into a competitive advantage for organizations, and so they can wrap their minds around it and fully embrace it? And what are some of the mistakes to avoid while they're going through this process of change management and automating their processes going forward?
Yeah, very good question. And I think it's about creating the win-win, right? So I think I'm going to give an example. It's always like good to put yourself in the position of a customer.
Right.
Today, when you want to book a hotel, are you going to go to, or a vacation place, are you going to go to Airbnb and make the reservation in 5 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to pick up the phone and call a travel agent, and you might want to do the booking in the weekend, Friday night, and you don't want to get a voicemail, right? So it's the same thing for your business. So if you're a finance person, as a supplier, your customers are already used to this advanced technologies on the consumer personal side. Mm-hmm. They might want to review their bills on a weekend. They might want to review the bills on the thing. They might want to pay via different form of digital payments. Could be credit card, could be ACH, real-time payment, right, and so forth, right? So there is a big amount of self-service economy that's happening, which is efficient for you and your customers. So if you don't bring the change, it is the same as you would not use that supplier as a thing, and you'll find an alternative. So that is very hard to visualize in the short term, in the current moment, in the current year. But if you think about it over 5 to 10 years, you want to be a supplier who's going to take the digital transformation as a competitive differentiation versus your competitors, versus being late, and then that potentially impacts your business, just like you're doing that as a consumer to right, your suppliers.
Right, right. And so what I'm finding is there are pain points, and again, change isn't something that everyone truly always embraces all the time, even though it's needed. Sometimes pain points are addressed in the beginning so that it's smooth sailing going forward, or sometimes it's at the end. And I always find that addressing pain points at the end is much more cumbersome and troublesome than addressing those things in the beginning, right? It looks like everything that HighRadius has done and continue to do helps organizations address those pain points in the beginning so that they're smoother sailing going forward. Is that the right way to look at that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
I mean, change management is key. We do specific things in terms of training, adoption, but you also do an ongoing reinforcement. Yep. But a lot of it is just the exec support and having those conversations with your teams on how is it better for your career as well, and how upskilling is good for you for your own professional development. A little bit of what's in it for them conversation with the finance teams that are actually doing the work.
Right, right. Excellent. Excellent. Well, Sashi, thank you very much for this fantastic conversation. We appreciate you making time to do this. And thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the Savvy Report. I know those tuning in got a wealth of information and great insight into how their organizations can leverage forward-looking technology to remain competitive today and in the next 5 years. And you can find more information about HighRadius and how they help organizations improve their order-to-cash processes by visiting www.highradius.com. And so, Sashi, thank you again for joining us. And thank you for joining me and my guest, Sashi Narahari, on this episode of the Savvy Report. I'm Ernie Martin, and we'll see you next time.